Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Cadet Lieutenant Commander Harris, and I'm the commanding officer of our Navy Junior ROTC Corps of Cadets. On behalf of the Corps of Cadets and the Pride of Claremore High School Band, we welcome you today to our 2025 Patriot Day, 9/11 Remembrance, and Constitution Day ceremony. Would you please stand for the parading of the colors and remain standing for our national anthem performed by our high school band. Company, attention, hut, color guard, parade the colors.
Color guard, halt, present, guys.
Color guard, post, company, order, arms.
Right turn, arch.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated.
Arch, arch.
I would like to welcome our special guests in attendance who have joined us on the football field. Before we begin our ceremony, I would like to introduce Ms. Jade Brown from the Oklahoma Blood Institute.
Hold on. Order. Colors.
Good morning. My name is Jade Brown. I work with our Blood Institute, and I help ensure that over 95% of all the hospitals and medical facilities throughout the state of Oklahoma have the blood products they need to care for local patients. These blood products help supply Hillcrest Hospital Claremore, Claremore Indian Hospital, and Air Evac Claremore to ensure that the local patients right here in the community have the blood products needed to help save their lives. We are all gathered here today sharing in the remembrance of September 11th, and I'm proud to remember that during that time, the response from first responders across the country was amazing and impactful. OBI also answered the call that day. We responded by sending nearly 7,500 units of blood to New York to help care for patients in the aftermath of the incident. OBI was one of the only flights in the air for 10 days as we consistently used the Angel flights to fly in blood products to patients in need. This was a proud moment and continues to remind us that we must be ready to be there in these times of needs. The donors here in Claremore truly understand the impact of blood donation, and that is evident when we look at the impact of the Claremore High School blood drives. Today, I'm here to recognize Claremore High School. Under the leadership of the NEJ-ROTC cadets, the students, the school leaders, and the community, I want to say thank you. We appreciate you, and I'd like to present you with this certificate of appreciation signed by our President and CEO, Dr. John Armitage. The certificate reads, Claremore High School, the class 5A, second in the state of Oklahoma. Thank you for collecting a total of 304 blood donations during the 2024-2025 school year with a life-saving impact of 912 lives.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. This coming September 17th, we celebrate Constitution Day. I would like to start out today by saying a few words about the Constitution of the United States. In May 1787, over 50 leaders of the new United States came together at Independence Hall in Philadelphia. Their purpose was to write a constitution. They agreed the Articles of Confederation, the first constitution they created, was not strong enough. The delegates wanted to form a more perfect union, but it took time before the delegates agreed on what powers to give the central government and what powers to reserve for the states. The delegates agreed that the central government needed 3 branches. Each branch would have a job to do. The branches would work together, but they would also act as a check and balance for the other branches. After much discussion, they decided they needed a president and a vice president to make up the executive branch. The legislative branch would be Congress, made up of elected representatives of the states. The Congress was to work to make federal laws that were fair to all of the states. The third branch was the judicial branch, the Supreme Court. The delegates realized they needed a way to change the constitutional laws as the nation developed. They devised a system of amendments. 10 amendments, called the Bill of Rights, were added to the Constitution in May 1790. After they were added, all 13 states ratified the new Constitution. Today, we are here in remembrance of September 11, 2001. By a joint resolution approved on December 18, 2001, Congress designated September 11th of each year as Patriot Day. September 11, 2001, a horrific day in our history. As you know, today will mark the 23rd anniversary of that cowardly terrorist attack on the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, United States Airlines Flight 93, and our country. We gather here today to pay tribute to all the heroes and innocent victims who lost their lives on September 11, 2001. We want the world to know that Claremore High School has not forgotten what happened on that terrible day. Although as students we were not yet born, however, our parents, grandparents, and other family members have shared with us the tremendous heartbreak they felt on that day. They also told us of the incredible bravery and sacrifices made by our police, fire, EMS, and military personnel, and we have witnessed the resilience of the American spirit ever since. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please direct your attention to the big screen?
So on 9/11, I was actually in England. I was at work. I had just graduated high school that previous summer. So when I was at the shop, I was just doing my everyday thing. And then all of a sudden, people from the economy just kept coming in and yelling, "Hey, did you hear what happened? Did you hear what happened? You need to go look at the news." And so I go to the back of the break room and I watch this news. I watch the first plane that hitting. And then as we're watching the first plane, we see the second plane. And just that immediate reaction of what is going on as I'm just watching this on replay, knowing that my dad was on a flight. He was supposed to be over New York City that time, and then not knowing where he was, what was going on, and realizing that this was not just a plane crash like we had all initially assumed, that it was something much bigger. And so just having that knee-jerk reaction while in a foreign country, not knowing what's happening.
So I was in college at the time, and I was actually getting ready to go to my speech class. And as I was getting ready, I had the TV on, and it was shortly after the first plane hit, and I thought it was fake. Like, I turned it on, I was like, am I really seeing what I'm seeing? And I picked up the phone, I called my mother, she was at work, and I asked her, I said, is this real? And about the time that she got the TV on at her work is when the second plane hit. And that's kind of when everybody knew this is a real situation, this is really happening. Kind of progressed forward. I went to class that day. I went to speech, I was sitting in speech, and it was a topic of discussion. One of the classmates had a brother that was on an aircraft carrier, and one of our other classmates actually got called out during class by an officer because he belonged to a tank unit based out of New York. And that's what made it real. He stood up, said it was nice to know everybody, and probably that we would never see him again. And that's when it was like, it was a shock factor. We knew what was involved, but it became real at that point and how it affected everyone in class. Day progressed. I got phone calls from my parents, come get vehicles because gas prices were going through the roof. They were shutting down fuel stations. The country was in shock, and it hit really hard at that point.
Well, it was in the morning. I remember we were sitting. Typically I travel during the week, but I was at home. I was working at the hospital complexes in downtown Tulsa, and I know all this started about 9 o'clock, but about 9:30, 9:45, you could almost tell there was a tension, and there were people that were gathering around the TV. So probably 45 minutes later, I recognized that something had happened. And so you could see the shock on people's faces. They were gathered around the TV and they were watching the news reports, and it was reported that, there were a couple airplanes that had already hit the towers, and that there was an airplane that had hit the Pentagon, and that was probably maybe an hour later, hour and a half later, somewhere around that time frame. But we realized then that now our republic, the United States, was being attacked. And so again, there was a lot of shock on people's faces. And then you see the horror of 9/11. You actually see people jumping from that building before the building came down. And you knew that something horrible, terrible had happened. And so we had went on about our day, but eventually Tulsa started talking about, and downtown started talking about shutting the city down. We know that all the flights were canceled, are being stopped, and all the ground ops were being halted at Tulsa International Airport. And then the hospital, we started hearing rumors that the hospital was potentially preparing for secondary attacks, even in a city like Tulsa. And so they were talking about, what do we do if we have a mass casualty event? So I stayed probably until mid-afternoon, and then I went home and basically watched the news for the next week and a half.
I think at times we still feel the effects, and at that time our country came together, and it was a situation where we were going to be undefeated. We were going to take care of our business, and there was nothing that was going to stand in our way at that time. At times since, we've had moments of that, but that's a thing that you hope never has to happen for your country, to be unified and have a common stance and to take arms together and to move in a common direction.
What I'm seeing today is we come and remember this, right, once a year, we think about it, but we still have that impact of this one time in country where everything stood still. Everything was just solid. We all were unified. I remember being, with the English people, and they were unified with us, and just that feeling of just feeling surrounded by people who had my best interests at heart, who were worried about me as a country, worried about everything going on, and just seeing that as it's progressed through the years has been kind of amazing to see, and just sort of, it would be nice to kind of go back into that bubble of that camaraderie of what it was, but just in that time frame, just being the most unified that I've ever felt as an American.
to keep us safe. A giant round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please remain standing and join us for the playing of taps as we reflect on the nearly 3,000 lives lost on September 11, 2001. Company, attend, hut. Present arms. Order, arms. Today, we reaffirm our spirit and alliance to our country, our flag, and our Constitution through patriotism, service to others, and unity. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our Patriot Day and Constitution Remembrance Ceremony. Thank you so much for joining us today. Company, dismissed.